Ivy Valentine subscribes to Mark Yoon, so should you. Enjoy your treat!
I often get asked about console exclusivity, whether that be somebody's favorite character from their franchise crossing over and possibly being in a future incarnation of SoulCalibur, or whether it be just why the version of the game is not on their system. There's a lot of different things that go into it, and like with everything else that's surrounding SoulCalibur, it's a little bit unique in the way it approaches things and in the explanations as well. So I'm going to try to the very best of my ability give you my understanding of why this is, with a little bit of details thrown in there. So let's begin. So we go back all the way to Soul Blade. And Soul Blade and Soul Edge were only available on the PlayStation 1. They are technically SoulCalibur 1, as you guys all know by now. Soul Edge is the Japanese version, and the NTSC version is Soul Blade. Both are great games. Both kicked off the SoulCalibur franchise. They have all the characters that we know and love. They have different movesets and unique mechanics that are in the game, like dropping your weapon and fighting without a weapon. There's a lot of stuff in that game that's really great. Now here comes the problem. The game didn't sell super well. It sold okay enough to warrant a sequel, but this is where their funding started to come from, and Sega decided to help publish the game. When that happened, and they actually had an outlet for SoulCalibur 1, that's where we encountered our first problem, because SoulCalibur 1, being of the license that it was for its production, was only available on Dreamcast. Now, Dreamcast was a good system. I loved my Dreamcast, but it didn't last too long because the PlayStation 2 came out and pretty much blew it out of the water. So we have an exclusivity of a console that didn't sell very well, combined with a sequel to a game that's got a first name basis, and a lot of people, this one just slipped under the rug. Now, SoulCalibur 1 was released again later with another exclusive thing because it was on the Xbox Marketplace and not available on PlayStation or Nintendo, obviously. But this game, I believe it's delisted, but I think if you get the code for it, from Amazon or something, you can still download the game. But that was only available on the Xbox Marketplace, and that's the only way that game has been relived or revitalized. Other than that, you actually need the physical copy and you need a Sega Dreamcast in order to play it. So we jump off the gate with problems with sales due to console exclusivity, and it's because of funding. So after that, SoulCalibur 2 came out, and they're like, okay, not a lot of people remember Soul Edge or Soul Blade. In fact, a lot of people don't even remember that that's actually the first SoulCalibur game. SoulCalibur 1 sold pretty well, but it was on a Dreamcast, which didn't sell as well as expected, and it was Sega's last foray, let's say, into the console space before they became a publisher only. So you have to have that hardware in order to play the software, which didn't reach a lot of people, right? Because the consoles were coming out a lot at that time, and then people chose one console pretty much, especially when we were young, and that's the one that you stuck to. Not many people had every console that was coming out. Not everybody was fortunate enough to be in a situation where they can have all the consoles. So you build up a fan base on PlayStation and then pull the rug from under them for the next game so that only people that have a Dreamcast can experience SoulCalibur, and now you're forgetting the original, and now we're going into SoulCalibur 2. So SoulCalibur 2, Project Soul came together and was basically okay, we have a little bit more money now. We're 2 games in. This is our 3rd game. This has got to be big. We want guest characters to bring people in to let them know that SoulCalibur is still a thing. And they went all out. They sought a bunch of different platforms to be on. They paid licensing fees for guests. We even had creator Todd McFarlane, Image Comic, and Marvel and whatever. He's been all around. But Todd McFarlane, who most of you know, who created Necrid for the game and also created Spawn, allowed him to be a guest in SoulCalibur 2's Xbox version. Link was in the GameCube version because it's a Nintendo console, so obviously. And then we had Heihachi, who wasn't supposed to be the guest, but since they already owned the license for him, he became the guest for PS2. We all know this story. Now, what you don't know is that overall, Nintendo didn't really release the sales numbers as they don't usually for SoulCalibur 2, to the best of my knowledge. So when it comes to the actual sales of that game, it's hovering around somewhere 2.5 million, maybe 3 million, something like that. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I've looked this up a million times, but I just don't remember right now. But around that number. So it's around what normal Soul Calibur games sell. But this is split between 3 consoles. So you have people who have a Dreamcast looking for a sequel, so they have to buy one of these 3 consoles. And then you have all of the adopters of those 3 consoles now buying the console exclusive version of their character, and then the very rare group of people who had all the consoles and all the versions of the game. Now, with that being said, the game is probably the most popular out of all of the Soul Calibur games. It's not my favorite, but it's up there as the most popular Soul Calibur game, so I'm not going to even try to contest that. I played the Xbox version the most because I love Spawn. I did mess around on the GameCube version with Link, and his like thief-like style. The PlayStation 2 version I ended up playing with friends a lot because a lot more of my friends had PS2s than Xboxes or GameCubes, so when we actually did play together, it was that version of the game. Now, herein lies the biggest problem, because we already had console exclusivity for 2 generations, and now we're going into one where it's open and it's on everything, but the characters have console exclusivity. So we have the guest characters on each version, as I just mentioned. Now, that's not the biggest problem. That's where people think the problem actually arose, but that's not where the problem actually came from. So the problem came from you're building in a fan base of characters and people that are on these certain platforms playing your game. And the game was a hit. So now we're going to go into Soul Calibur 3 to get a sequel. Now, here's the problem. Nintendo didn't release their numbers, and as we know, Nintendo doesn't usually release their numbers unless they're super proud of something. And the fact that they came out and said that they weren't happy with the sales of the GameCube version for licensing out Link, it kind of put a sour taste in their mouth, and it left them with like a little bit of a, I don't want to say a grudge, but like a let's not try that again kind of thing with Project Soul. Like, the proof is in the pudding. It didn't sell as much as we thought it would sell, even having our flagship character. So let's just like not go down this road again. People that were playing on Xbox, I believe the Xbox version was the least sold version of Soul Calibur 2, which is ironic because it's the one that I played the most. But people that were on that console were just looking for different things at the time, I guess. Like, the player base wasn't as big. And so going into the next game for Soul Calibur 3, for getting a sequel, Sony offered to fund the game for exclusive rights. So the first game was on PlayStation, and now Soul Calibur 3 is again coming back to PlayStation. So Soul Calibur 3, which is my favorite game, was a PlayStation 2 exclusive. Like, you couldn't play it on Xbox, you couldn't play it on anywhere else except for like the arcade, basically. And then there was later an arcade version that was released in small quantities, but that being my favorite game, also there was a guest that fell through with that. I'm guessing because of budgetary financial reasons, because Sony was footing the bill, so maybe they didn't want to pay for that licensing fee. But there are like pseudo guests in the game as the Xenosaga characters. There are costumes where you can actually create them and create a soul. And this being the first game that actually had Create a Soul. So you can tell there's a lot of money and funding put into this game, Soul Calibur 3, if you've played it. So now the Xbox fan base is now gone, because they're not going to buy a PS2 just because of Soul Calibur. Same goes for the GameCube version, especially after Nintendo coming out and saying that. Why would they want to put their hopes in like getting a future Nintendo console version, which there hasn't been since then, by the way, unless you count Soul Calibur Legends on the Wii, which I don't, because it's not a mainline series game. But so we have that, and then we're going into now Soul Calibur 4. So now what do we have? We have people that like Soul Calibur, right? And we have the people that played it on PlayStation 1, who probably migrated to PlayStation 2, so now the only versions that they possibly have are the Soul Calibur 2, with their console exclusive Heihachi, and Soul Blade. That's it. They don't have Soul Calibur 1, they don't have that's it. Those are the 2 games they're stuck with. So now they possibly have Soul Calibur 3, so they have the biggest library of stuff, but they're still missing Soul Calibur 1. Nintendo users, they only have the GameCube, and Xbox users, they only have the version with Spawn of Soul Calibur 2. So we have that player base, and that player base, all wanting to go into the next generation playing this game. So let's be super hyped for Soul Calibur 3, right? And then they go into Soul Calibur 3 and they can't play it. So now we're going into Soul Calibur 4, and once again we're going to go back to having funding from another company, because obviously Sony didn't foot the bill for this one, and guess who footed the bill for this one? Well, at least they didn't foot all of the bill, but they put a lot of resources and financial backing into the game, and it was for them because they saw the sales numbers of SoulCalibur and they were promoting The Force Unleashed, so they used that as a vehicle to promote their own game, which I think did well because I bought The Force Unleashed based off of SoulCalibur 4, so that helped, I guess, some people. We're not talking about the PSP exclusivity of Kratos and Broken Destiny, which is like the version of PlayStation 4 for handhelds, because that only came out on PSP. So again, another way that they can only play that game is on that version of that game. So now PlayStation users seem to be in the strongest front. They also have Darth Vader as a guest character and Yoda as a guest character on the Xbox version. Now, this doesn't count as console exclusivity because it was timed content, because they did allow each user to download the opposite character via DLC later on. So it is possible to have a complete version of that game if you own an Xbox or a PlayStation. But at that time, you couldn't for SoulCalibur 2, and it seems we never will and didn't later also, because also on the PlayStation 2, we had on the PlayStation 3, we had the SoulCalibur 2 HD Online Edition, which came complete with Necrid, it came complete with Spawn, and it came complete with Heihachi. But Link is nowhere to be found because they couldn't renew the license because of what happened with original SoulCalibur 2. So all of the player base, all of these fans, all the people wanting to look forward now are pretty much locked into PlayStation or Xbox, right? Nintendo fans at this point have pretty much given up hope that SoulCalibur is going to be on a console that they have, except for, like I said, Legends on the Wii. And now we are going into SoulCalibur 5. SoulCalibur 5 was a completely different scenario to a completely different situation. They wanted to go in the way of esports. Even the director who was directing SoulCalibur 5 literally said that they wanted this to go in an esports way. He was trying to relate this game to being like Street Fighter Third Strike. That was like his direct quote. And that was the main inspiration for his game. He wanted all new cast of characters, all new people, so like a new generation of fans. It just didn't work out as well as Third Strike actually ended up doing eventually, because Third Strike wasn't really that... People weren't that happy about it when that launched also. But now we're getting into the weeds, so with SoulCalibur 5, they both had like Ezio Auditore from the Assassin's Creed franchise, which was on both consoles, so obviously he's a lot on both. And it was a better experience for people having everything, I suppose, just like SoulCalibur 4, except you had to buy the opposite character. But now we're baked in with this, and they had the Cepheus store where you're pretty much just buying costumes and whatnot, but none of that, to my knowledge, was console exclusive. We all know that like CC2, the people who make the Naruto games and Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, they were actually licensed out to, or outsourced out to creating the cinematics for the story mode. It is what it is. Everybody knows what happens with SoulCalibur 5. Now SoulCalibur 6 comes out, and it's been a long time. Like, the series got canceled, the team was disbanded, it had to get rebranded and put back together when Motohiro Okubo and the director came together and went to Bandai Namco and presented them with this game. And so we really think that this game could pop off, and we really think that this can sell again. And they gave them, like I said, you have to sell 1 million copies, and then we'll be able to greenlight the series going forward, which in my eyes is like saying, okay, that's a sequel. But greenlight the series going forward to me means sequel. It may mean something different to you guys, but that's what it means to me. But now we have the sales of SoulCalibur, and we know it's probably around 3 million. It might be a little bit more if you include digital sales and PC, but those numbers are not accounted for. So we just have our 2 million physical copies that the game reached like well over 2 years ago at this point. So it's safe to say that like that's increased like a lot more since then. But going into SoulCalibur 7, when people are asking me about guests, and when people are asking me about console exclusivity, and when people are thinking that SoulCalibur 7 could possibly be on Nintendo's next console, because it certainly won't be on the Switch. And I don't want to hear about Mortal Kombat, because that game runs like garbage and it looks like garbage. So I wouldn't want SoulCalibur to like be sullied on there, except I'd feel bad for like the only Switch owners who still want to play the game, which is why console exclusivity is, in my eyes, a bad thing for them. But the player base is so broken up and fractured at this point over generations and generations and generations of being dragged this way and that way and this way and wanting to have a streamline. when I say jagged, I mean like if you only have Nintendo consoles, you're not having the full experience. If you only have Xbox consoles, you're not having the full experience. And if you have a PlayStation, though you have the most full experience, you still don't have the fullest experience because you don't have Soul Calibur. Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to. I have the consoles. I have to have my Soul Calibur version because I no longer have my Dreamcast on my Xbox 360 via the Xbox Marketplace. So that's where that is. And it seems like I'm rambling, but I just wanted to make this video to concisely as I best can put why console exclusivity won't probably happen. I mean, they already said after Soul Calibur 2, Project Soul that is, that like they weren't comfortable going forward with console exclusivity because of what happened between them and Nintendo with Link and that situation. And 4 was a different scenario because it still could be a complete game. 2 is still not to this day a complete game, so much to my dismay. But that's what happens, and that's why when we talk about having console exclusive characters, how they're not going to bring them back, that's why we say that. So when people are asking like, yes, I want Jin Sakai because he fits. Yeah, Jin Sakai would definitely fit, but like it's a PlayStation exclusive, so they can't put that on the Xbox version, and that's going to hurt his chances of getting in and pretty much eliminate his chances of getting in. We can refer to my last like guest video if you want to see the contingencies from how they actually choose guests and put them in games. But the situation is what it is. Like, I still think that they're going to choose good guest characters, and hopefully like it gets like a good PC port at least. Soul Calibur 7. I still doubt it's going to be on a Nintendo console, but we'll see. Like, anything's possible. But that's my thoughts on console exclusivity and why I think it's bad. Like, I don't like to see the player base fractured. If they want to go from one generation to the next and bring their games along with them, not just those old games, but like the ability to like still play them and keep with the same trajectory, then I think that's best that it's on all consoles. But business is what business is, and business does what business does. Now, before the end of the video, I want to get to the poll of my last video, and we actually asked, generally speaking, have you been happy about the guest characters that have been included in the previous Soul Calibur games? 68% said yes for the most part, 8% said no, not really, and 24% said it's a mixed bag, and you can see the comments while we're reading this. This is out of a poll of 234 votes, and if you want to vote on the next poll, they're always up after the video goes live, and I will show your comments on screen and obviously talk about the poll. Any and all thoughts are always welcome in the comment section down below, guys. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please jump on the Discord if you want. The link to that is in the description box down below. We talk about everything, not just Soul Calibur. Any and all thoughts are always welcome. And as I always say, guys, I love it. Thank you.
And thank you.